Welcome back to Dane Comics, and in today's episode I want to talk about the myth, the legend, but the man, Bruce Lee. Not exactly comic related, but I think it's comic adjacent, because I feel like Shang-Chi is obviously based on Bruce Lee, and just about every comic book fan is a Bruce Lee fan. And but what I think people don't know is how down to earth Bruce Lee is, and how American Bruce Lee is. I think a lot of people don't realize that. I think it's because after he died, there was a lot of marketing, and they mythologized him immediately because he died so young, and he became sort of this like ethereal figure. And that's all great and all, but and it's good to respect people and honor them and all that, but when you realize how human they are, then it makes what they did more possible for anyone, because they were human. And being human is actually amazing because it shows everyone's potential and what they can do. So how do I know this is how do I know there's a misconception, right? I'm going to use one major piece of evidence, and it's called Bruce Lee, The Lost Interview. It's never been broadcast in its entirety. It's like some old unaired pilot episode, or an episode of a show, the Pierre Burton Show. It's an interview show where he goes around the world and interviews people. And on one episode they interviewed Bruce Lee, but they didn't air it. You do know one clip from this interview though, okay? I'm gonna play this famous clip for you, which a lot of people use to define who Bruce Lee is, okay?
Empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow, or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
Great, right? You like that, right? Okay. But what nobody knows is that Bruce Lee is reciting the lines of a script that he memorized as an actor, and he's performing the lines from the show, from the script in that moment, okay? So this clip is always cut out of context. Immediately before the clip, this is what happens.
Can you remember the lines by Sterling Sullivan, the key lines?
He's one of my students, you know that?
Was he too?
Yes.
You've had everybody as your student. But you read, there were some lines that expressed your philosophy. I don't know if you remember them or not.
I remember that.
Let's hear.
This is what it is, okay?
You're talking to Longstreet, played by James Francesca.
I said,
and then immediately after the clip, this is what happens.
like that, you see?
I see. I get the idea. I get the power behind it.
But if you watch the whole interview in its entirety, you're gonna see he's more American than I think the world even realizes. He talks with slang. He's from California. He's been here most of his life. And he also talks about how Chinese people don't think he's Chinese enough, and Americans, they try to make him exotic.
How about the other side of the coin? Is it possible that you're fairly hip and fairly Americanized. Are you too Western for Oriental audiences, do you think?
Oh man, like, how? I have been criticized for that.
You have, eh?
Oh, yes, definitely. So. Well, let me say this. When I do the Chinese film, I'll try my best not to be as American as I, have been adjusted to for the last 12 years in the States. But when I go back to the States, it seems to be the other way around. You know what I mean?
You're too exotic, eh?
Yeah, man. I mean, they're trying to get me to do too many things that are really for the sake of being exotic. You understand what I'm trying to say?
Oh, sure.
So it's really, it's
when you live in both worlds, it brings us problems as well as advantages, and you've got both.
Those are his own words, okay? So, in Enter the Dragon, he's wearing all these like Chinese outfits, and he's always walking around, and he's like this ultra-wise Chinese guy and all that, but that's not Bruce Lee. Okay, so a lot of you don't know. Bruce Lee, he started out as a child actor. many people don't know this, he was a child actor. His dad was a famous actor, and then they thought, hey, let's bring him into movies, and he did a bunch of movies as a kid. Afterwards, he became a world-class cha-cha dancer. Bruce Lee, before the martial arts, was a world-class cha-cha dancer, okay? Afterwards, he left, and he had to learn kung fu because, everyone knew he was a pretty boy. He was an actor, he was a dancer. Everybody wanted to beat him up because he was a ladies' man, and people hated that. And people just beat his ass all the time in Hong Kong. So he had to learn Wing Chun from Ip Man. And, then he learned martial arts and he got really into it, right? And then he knew, to have a future, you gotta go to America. So he went to America. There he went to university, he studied philosophy of some, subjects. He married his future wife, Linda, right? And then he taught martial arts on the side. He taught martial arts to people in California, more and more people. He did demonstrations. People were like, wow, this guy's really cool. And he was so charismatic, right? That celebrities started wanting to train with him. So then all these famous actors like James Coburn and Steve McQueen and, he had and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He had a slew of celebrity students that wanted to train under this cool martial arts guru in California, Hollywood and all that. And they would just recommend, hey man, you should try out for this part. They would love you in the movies. You should be in the movies. People tell him. So as a child, oh, you should be in the movies. Oh, you should dance. You should learn Wing Chun. You should, try auditioning for things, right? And then he did the Green Hornet show. And he also thinks he did a terrible job doing the Green Hornet show because he was still learning, right?
By the way, I did a really terrible job in that, I have to say.
Really? You didn't like yourself in Green Hornet? I didn't see it.
But he never meant to be an actor. He even says it.
Well, definitely in the beginning, I had no intention or whatsoever that what I was practicing and what I'm still practicing now would lead to this to begin with. But martial art has a very, very deep meaning as far as my life is concerned because as an actor, as a martial artist, as a human being, all these I have learned from martial art.
It just kind of happened to him, right? He kind of just listened to the universe and went with it, and he would go and try all these different things. Then he did the movies, he did The Big Boss in Hong Kong, and it was so revolutionary because he was doing all his own stunts, and it was like a fighting style that wasn't as flowery, right? He was using a lot of his principles of self-defense that he developed over his own theory of Jeet Kune Do, which is like taking in everything, and using what is effective and getting rid of what's not effective. And it's in his writings too. If you read his books, he's a really humble cat. So a lot of people, I guess recently, once upon a time in LA, he came across as this brash, asshole, cocky guy. But I don't know, because this interview is the longest footage of video of seeing Bruce Lee in his rawest state before his fame. And this is what he has to say about that.
Are you going to be a superstar here or one in the States or both?
Well, let me say this. First of all, the word superstar really turned me off, and I'll tell you why. Because the word star, man, it's an illusion. It's something what the public calls you. You should look upon oneself as an actor, man. You would be very pleased if somebody say, hey, man, you are a super actor. It is much better than, superstar.
Yeah, therefore, you've got to admit that you are a superstar. You're not going to, if you're going to give me the truth.
I'm honestly saying this, okay? Yes, I have been very successful.
Yeah.
Okay? But I think the word star I do not look upon myself as a star. I really don't. Believe me, man, when I say it. I'm not saying it because
what are you going to do? Let's get back to the question.
Okay.
Are you going to stay in Hong Kong and be famous? Or are you going to go to the United States and be famous? Or are you going to try and eat your cake and have it too?
I am going to do both because, you see, I have already made up my mind that in the United States, I think something about the Oriental, the true Oriental should be shown.
So I encourage you to watch this interview because I think it's going to change the way you view Bruce Lee. I think there are a lot of special interests wanted to make Bruce Lee this holy man in order to, make money off of him like crazy, instead of just the man who just listened to the universe and became what he is. Like, honestly, like when I turned 32, or 33, right? And I realized I was older than Bruce Lee when he died. I'm sure, I think 90% of my viewers are over 35, right? So when you hit 33, like, imagine that. You're older than Bruce Lee when he died. He's a freaking kid. He died a kid. And I do not believe he would want to be put on such a pedestal. I don't even believe that, based on this key piece of evidence and based on his life trajectory and his history.
Man, listen, you see, really, to me, ultimately, martial art means honestly expressing yourself. Now, it is very difficult to do. I mean, it is easy for me to put on a show and be cocky, and be flooded with a cocky feeling and then feel like pretty cool and all that. Or I can make all kinds of phony things, you see what I mean, blinded by it. Or I can show you some really fancy movement. But to express oneself honestly, not lying to oneself, and to express myself honestly, that, my friend, is very hard to do. And you have to train. You have to keep your reflexes so that when you want it, it's there. When you want to move, you're moving. And when you move, you are determined to move. Not taking 1 inch, not anything less than that. If I want to punch, I'm going to do it, man, and I'm going to do it, you see. So, I mean, so that is the type of thing you have to train yourself into it, to become one with the, you think?
Yeah, this is very un-Western, this attitude.
It's just that he did himself so hard, so honestly, that it shook the world and it just kind of stunned people. And that's why he became who he was. Him dying, of course, at a young age was horrible, but he had an impact because he was like this fire that no one had ever seen before. But he was super American and he was super down to earth. That's what people don't realize about Bruce Lee, because he's been taken out of context since he died. And I've actually never seen any narrative do justice to his down-to-earth nature, his Americanness, and his humbleness. I haven't seen any project do it. They either make him like this holy man, this perfect being, or super cocky and brash and annoying. And I wonder if it's because we don't have many stories of people like him exactly. I wonder if it's because, you want stories of people being super flawed or super perfect. But you can't have something where it's like humble and just trying, and like all of us, Like, so we can all be Bruce Lee. Like, all of our heroes, all the famous geniuses in the world that everyone says is a genius. A lot of them, if they take an IQ test, they're not technically a genius on paper. It's just they figured out how to listen to the universe and do something perfectly so hard on their own, as themselves, so hard that the world now thinks they're a genius. There's plenty of examples. Artists, actors, writers. They're not really genius. And I've also met geniuses and they're not that smart sometimes, because that's not really what it's about. And so when we see, the problem is like celebrities are our new gods. That's really the problem, right? And when you make a god of a human being, everything they've accomplished becomes unattainable in your unconscious mind. Because when you make a god of a man, you cannot achieve what they've achieved. So anytime we take any celebrity has somewhat become a god. But the truth is, they're all just people. They're all just some person that figured out what they love and did it so hard that they became a celebrity. But they're not a god. They're all humans. And you can do everything they can do. So we need to stop idolizing humans with celebrity culture. And it also makes it a lot easier when you actually meet celebrities and talk to famous people. Because when you don't care if they're famous or whatever, they tend to warm up to you better. They tend to relax and be themselves more, because that's a lot of pressure to be a god. Because I think that's the truth of the matter with celebrities. They are the new gods, and but they're not gods. They're people. Remember that. I believe Kanye West actually talked about this a lot. So did Jay-Z. Jay-Z talks about this a lot too. We can't be putting human beings on a pedestal because it makes their achievements unattainable. But it's not like that at all. We are way more capable of incredible things than people know. Bruce Lee was a visionary, and he showed that path. He showed what is possible. He showed what a person can do, because he's a freaking amazing dancer. I don't think you know that, right? He's also an incredible actor, you know, like he was an actor first, dancer second, martial artist third. But we just think of him as a kung fu god. But actually, he's just a guy that was interested in the world and listened to what the world wanted him to do and did it really hard. And so can all of us, especially when we stop seeing people as gods, because they're human. And that's awesome. That makes it better. So that's all I wanted to say about Bruce Lee. I don't know. I think I love Bruce Lee, you know, but I also love that he was human, and he inspires me to try to be all kinds of things at once and not let people define me and put me in a box, because people put me in a box all the time. It's like story of my life, right? But Bruce Lee showed me, like, you shouldn't give a fuck about what other people think. Just be yourself really hard. Yeah, so if you like this video, like, subscribe, and in the comments, tell me how Bruce Lee inspired you. Because what I do know is Bruce Lee, whenever he showed violence, it was really important to him that there was a reason for the violence. Like, he understands the absurdity of violence, okay? Like, okay, look at this clip.
I mean, in nowadays, I mean, you don't go around on the street kicking people or punching people. Because if you do,
Yeah.
that's it. I mean, I don't care how good you are, you know.
And even when, like, everyone's like, oh, he's the baddest man in the world, right? He's even asked a question like this, and look what happens.
Can you break 5 or 6 pieces of wood with your hand or your foot?
I'll probably break my hand and foot.
He did not take himself as seriously as everyone is taking him. He doesn't do that. And this is what so he's a guy you want to hang out with, actually. Like, Bruce Lee came in the house, you just want to have dinner with him, chill, have a drink. That's the type of dude he was, right? And I think that's getting lost in this whole idolatry of human beings issue that we're having. And it's happening with influencers and all that stuff too, but y'all, it's all people. And we're all people, so understand your own potential and and believe in yourself, because you can be Bruce Lee. So if you like this video, like, subscribe, and in the comments, tell me how Bruce Lee has affected your life. Yeah, it's a little off tangent, but I think it's a little comic adjacent enough for me to do this video, and I have been collecting y'all.